Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. Today, talking about the Record Store Day 2025 list and my first thoughts on it. There's a bunch of links down below. You got links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. So make sure you check all that out. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. So the Record Store Day 2025 list just came out a couple of days ago. It actually came out on Thursday. So I did a video on Thursday that I shot, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 days before that with my predictions for Record Store Day. A bunch of albums I thought we might see. Of course, I was completely wrong on all my predictions, but I think there is still some really good releases coming out this year. I was hoping for some of those really big ones. I still think there are a couple on this one, but not as much as I really hoped we could see. So my first impression when I was going down through the list for Record Store Day, it's kind of the same feeling I've had over the last several years. There's a lot of live albums, there's a lot of picture discs, there's a lot of 7-inch singles on there. I was surprised how the amount of demo releases this year. I know they've been more popular over the last several years, but there seems to be even more this year than they have been before. And for bands and albums I love, I realize that I really don't listen to those demo releases nearly enough to drop the money on them. And as pricing has rolled out over the last couple of days, there's some albums I had on my maybe list that end up having a knockoff because of pricing. You got that Better Than Ezra, How Does Your Garden Grow, which I think is a really good album. It's not nearly as good as Deluxe. And I get that Deluxe was $55 last year for Black Friday. This one's going to be around that same price this year. There's also Tesla Reel to Reel. It's going to run you around $60. There's the George Harrison All Things Must Pass. Again, it's a 3 LP Zoetrope picture disc. It's going to run you around $100. Those are all the ones I had on my maybe list that I did knock off. Because every year I set a budget for Record Store Day, I really stay within that budget. There's only been a couple of times I've gone outside of it. And it's got to be for a really special release for me to go above my budget. But I really try to stay within that. So because of that, I had to knock some of those releases off. But I still have several that I've got on my maybe list. The first one is this Charles Mingus at Monterey. This is an RSD first. There's 2,000 copies. It's a 2 LP release. It's going to run you around $41. And if you're not familiar with Record Store Day, you've got RSD firsts, which just means it's going to get released on Record Store Day. And then more than likely, it'll get released down the line also, depending on how those albums sell on Record Store Day. And then you've also got RSD exclusive releases, which you're only going to get those on Record Store Day. They're not supposed to be pressed later on down the line, which sometimes they are, but it's very rare that happens. So if you want that release, you've got to go out on Record Store Day and get a copy of it. And then there's also some regional releases, which tend to be really low numbered. There's typically like 500 of those or less pressed. And those are really only selected for specific regions in the country. But Mingus at Monterey is taken from the 1964 Monterey Jazz Festival. It's a great performance. It's the first time it's been pressed on vinyl in over 40 years. It's all newer mastered by Michael Graves. I think it's going to be a really good release. $41, I probably would pick it up if it was a little bit cheaper than that, but it is an RSD first, so maybe I'll grab it down the line when it gets reissued. There's also Cypress Hill Live the Fillmore coming out. This is an RSD exclusive. There's going to be 2,500 copies of it. It's a 2 LP release. It's going to run you around $36. So this was all taken live from the Fillmore West out in San Francisco in August of 2000. It's the first time it's going to be available on vinyl. There's all the best tracks from Cypress Hill from their first 5 albums on there. I think it's going to be a really good release. $36. That's why I've got it on my maybe list. We'll see what I end up doing on Record Store Day with that one. The only album I knew was coming out for Record Store Day that I talked about in my prediction video is this David Bowie Ready, Set, Go. It's an RSD exclusive. There's going to be 6,400 copies of it, which I thought there'd be more copies available than that. But it is a 2 LP release. It's going to run you around $35. So this is taken from his historic September 2003 performance. It was watched by over 50,000 people. I think it was like 86 different theaters across 26 countries that people filed in and watched it. It is a really great performance if you're unfamiliar with it. You can check it out online. I think it's available on YouTube. You can go watch it, at least parts of it on there. It was the first live performance of his new album, Reality. Like I said, if you're unfamiliar with that one, at least go back and check that one out. Something I knew was going to be kind of pricey is this Oasis Time Flies 1994 to 2009. It's an RSD first. There's 1,000 copies of it. It's a 4 LP release. It says it's on colored vinyl, but doesn't say what color it is. I figured it was going to be around $100. It's going to be a little pricier than that. It's going to run you around 125 actually. It's an RSD first, so maybe I'll hold off and wait till this gets reissued to grab a copy of it. Maybe I can grab it on a sale somewhere after it gets reissued. But it contains all their singles from 1994 to 2009. It's all newly remastered. I think there's 27 tracks on this one. You know, I think this is definitely something that's probably geared more towards like the hardcore Oasis fans, because I don't know if anyone outside of that is going to drop $125 on this one. That's why I said maybe once it gets reissued, maybe I'll try to grab a copy of it then. And then rounding out my maybe list, I got a few albums that I think might be kind of flying under the radar a little bit. I haven't heard a whole lot of people talking about them so far. First one was this Frank Turner Positive Science for Negative People. It's an RSD first. There's 3,000 copies of it. It's 2 LP release. It's going to be on blue and red vinyl. It's going to run you around $40. This is a 10th anniversary release. It's coming out for Record Store Day. This album hit number 2 on the UK charts. I don't think it charted here in the US though, but Frank is one of those musicians where I didn't really get around to listening to his stuff until it's probably within the last few years. This is probably my favorite album from him though. And this comes with the second LP with the Mittens EP on there. It's the first time that's ever been available on vinyl. I think this is all newly remastered also. One album that I think has kind of gone under the radar for pretty much the last 25 years is Harvey Danger King James version. So this is an RSD first. It's going to be 1,000 copies of this one. So it's going to be a little more limited than some of the other releases. It's a 2 LP release. It's going to be on deep blue sea vinyl. It's going to run you around $45. So this was released back in 2000. It was a follow-up to their hugely successful Where Have All the Merrymakers Gone, which was the album that has Flagpole Sit on there, which is one track that everyone knows. But if you go back and listen to this album, I think this is a much better album than their debut. You know, yes, it doesn't have that one big track on there, but if you go back from beginning to end, I would take almost every single track on this album over pretty much anything on their debut. This is also the first time it's been released on vinyl. Like I said, when this album was released, it was pretty much ignored by the general public, but you know, it's one that I've loved for a very long time. And then the last album I got on my list is one that I'm not even sure is going to be available in my area. It's one of those regional releases. This is Party Next Door Party Pack. So there's going to be 1,000 copies of this. It's going to be a 1 LP release. It's going to be on Coke Bottle Clear vinyl. It's going to run you around $29. So this was released back in 2020. This is, I think there's 7 or 8 tracks on here. They're all unreleased demos. But Lil Yachty's on here, Quavo's on here. I think Nipsey Hussle is on there also. You know, if you're unfamiliar with Party Next Door, definitely go back and check his stuff out also. And then that takes me to my must-have list for Record Store Day. These are the titles I know I'm going to pick up. At least most of these I'm sure I'm going to end up grabbing. If I grab all these, I think it'll put me a little bit over my budget, but we'll see what I end up grabbing for Record Store Day. The first one was the first one I noticed on the list I knew I had to have. This is Black Sabbath, The Eternal Idol. It's an RSD first. There's going to be 6,000 copies of it. 1 LP release is going to be on translucent red vinyl. It's going to run you around $25. So this was released back in 1987 as Black Sabbath's first album with Tony Martin. Of course, all the Tony Martin albums just got released last year in a box set. This was one album that was missing from that one. And when that box set came out, me and a bunch of other people online were asking why this album wasn't included. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter because now we're getting a release of it for Record Store Day. And I don't think this has been reissued since 1987. At least off the top of my head, I don't remember there being a pressing of it since then. At least from the late 80s, it hasn't been reissued. So I'm pretty sure this is going to be a big mover for Record Store Day. Another album that I saw right away on the list, I knew I had to have this one. This is Post Malone Tribute to Nirvana. It's an RSD exclusive. It's going to be limited to 17,000 copies, so it should be pretty easy, I think, to grab a copy of it. It's going to be on yellow vinyl. It's going to run you around $35. So in April 2020, it was Post Malone. It was Travis Barker on drums. Who else was on there? There was Nick Mack on there and Brian Lee. They put together this live stream as a tribute to the great music from Nirvana. They played, I think it was 14 songs that they played on there. They did a really good job. I know a lot of people, there's a lot of complaints online like there is for pretty much everything. But I felt like there's a lot of negative comments towards their performance, which I don't think was warranted. I thought they did a really good job with it. Yes, you're never going to be able to replicate what Nirvana did, but especially coming from someone from Post Malone, which I really wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was, this is definitely what I was looking forward to. And I should add that all the proceeds from this album are going to go to Music Care's Recovery Mental Health Division. So, you know, the proceeds from this album are going to go to a really good cause also. So at the beginning of the year, I did a video talking about the albums I was really hoping to see get reissued in 2025. And Minstrel in the Gallery by Jethro Tull was one of them. But I wanted to see the deluxe edition of this album get released. So when Steven Wilson remixed and remastered this a few years ago, I think he did it for the 40th anniversary. It's going to be celebrating the 50th anniversary this year. But there's a bunch of extra material in that expanded edition that's only available on CD. Those tracks have never been available on vinyl, so I was hoping to see that this year. We're kind of getting that for Record Store Day. It's not just related to Minstrel in the Gallery, though, but this is Jethro Tull, Songs from the Vault, 1975 to 1978. So it's going to be an RSD exclusive. There's going to be 3,000 copies of it. 2 LP release. It's going to run around $35. So you got outtakes from Minstrel in the Gallery on here. There's also outtakes from Too Old to Rock and Roll, Songs from the Wood, and also Heavy Horses. So like all those great albums the band put together in the later part of the 70s. It's going to be a lot of those extra tracks that weren't available originally on those albums. I think most of these haven't been on vinyl before. So if you've been watching the channel for a while, you know I'm a huge Ramones fan. So when I saw Loco Live was going to be released for Record Store Day, of course I had to have that on my list. But this is kind of an interesting release. So this is an RSD exclusive. There's going to be 6,000 copies of it. It's a 2 LP release. It's going to be on red and blue vinyl. It's going to run around $35. So this album was recorded over 2 dates in March of 1991 in Spain. But there's actually 2 different versions of this album. So in 1991, Chrysalis released this album. And then in 1992, Sire released this album. Both albums have 32 tracks on there. But the Sire version has 4 different tracks than the Chrysalis version. So what's coming out on Record Store Day is the Sire version. If you want a copy of the full album of both of those shows from March 11th and 12th from 1991, I think it's only available on CD. It'd be kind of cool if they would have released both of them together as like I get it would have been, a 4 LP release, probably would have been $100, but whatever. It'd be kind of cool to have both of those shows available on vinyl, I think. Another album I'm really excited for is the Stone Temple Pilots Live in New Haven 1994. It's an RSD exclusive. There's going to be 3,500 copies of it. It's a 2 LP release. It's going to be on purple vinyl. It's going to run around $35. So this was all recorded in August 1994. So it's about a month after Purple came out. I kind of had a feeling they would release this at some point this year because they did Purple Rarities last year for Black Friday. I didn't think it was going to be an RSD release. But I think it was really during that Purple tour that Stone Temple Pilots was really at their peak. I think that Core was a really good album. And this might be kind of a controversial take, but I think Purple is an even better album. I think with Core, I think they're trying to copy a little bit too much of what was going on in the grunge scene. Had a little bit too much of a early Pearl Jam sound, I think. And then by Purple, I think they were more experimental with their sound. It's definitely a lot more varied across the album. There's not a bad track on it. So yeah, as soon as I saw this on the list, it was definitely one of the ones that went to the top of my list. An album I completely missed the first couple of times I went through the RSD release is this 20th anniversary edition of Teenage Bottle Rockets Total. So this is an RSD first. It's going to be 1,000 copies of it. It's a 1 LP release. It's going to be on black and white vinyl. It's going to run around $31. So this album came out back in 2005. It was their second studio album. And this is the album where I think Teenage Bottle Rocket really found their sound. If you're a fan of the Ramones, and if you're unfamiliar with this band, it's definitely one worth checking out. I think They Came From the Shadows is probably a better album. It's probably still my favorite album, but this one isn't too far behind it. And this is an album that's been due to get reissued for a very long time. It hasn't been available since it was first released in 2005. And you go on Discogs, it's like $150 plus if you want a copy of it. And then the last one I got on my must-have list is one that it's on my must-have list, but it's kind of softly on my must-have list. I might end up not picking this one up. But this is The Doors' Strange Days 1967, a work in progress. It's an RSD exclusive. There's going to be 7,500 copies of it. It's going to have translucent blue vinyl. It's going to run around $25. So these are all rough mixes from the recording sessions from 1967. And they've done a couple of these releases before. They did, Soft Parade Stripped, I think a couple of years ago, where they took like all the strings out of the album. It's cool to go back and listen to these albums because it's almost like being a fly on the wall when they're recording it. There's no overdubs on the version that's coming out on RSD. But I think this is really geared towards like the biggest Doors fans because, and I'm, I've been a huge fan of the band for a very long time, ever since I was like 13 or 14 years old. But even with those other RSD releases, I just don't go back to listen to them enough. It's only $25, so like I said, I might still grab it. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to on Record Store Day. Is this the best list of all time? No, but I think this is definitely a better list than we've had the last several years. Even though the last several years I've picked up quite a few albums for Record Store Day, I was always a little disappointed that we didn't have any of those huge releases. I think we are getting some of them this year. I think that Post Malone's going to be a great release. I'm definitely looking forward to that Black Sabbath. There's some that I'm still kind of on the fence about because of the pricing. We'll see if I stay within my budget this year, but let me know what you guys are looking forward to. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.